Hmm. Did you say ugali cake? Ugali cake? Stay tuned for the recipe. Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel, The Baker at K, where we give you tips, tricks, hacks, and DIYs. My name is Esther Masharia, and I'm a baker at eBakers Creations, which is based in Nairobi, Kenya. I'm a baker by training, practice, and by passion. So you're most welcome to this today's episode. I'm going to take you through something very interesting. If you're a Kenyan or if you've been to Kenya, you've heard of something called ugali. Ugali is basically white corn. Then when it's ground or milled, and then the flour is what we use to make that delicacy called ugali. It's Kenya's staple food, so most of us have at least tried, or if you've visited Kenya, you know about ugali. So I'm going to use corn flour. So I'm not going to use any wheat. So let's just say it is a gluten-free ugali cake. And today's flavor will be lemon. You can use any flavor, you can use orange, you can use basically anything. So stay tuned as I take you through. It doesn't really have to get that complicated, you know? And the way you can make this ugali cake, you don't have to have an oven. You can use something we call mawe tatu. Like you put your, let's say your sufuria or your saucepan on fire, and then you put some stones and another sufuria on top, and then you put your cake batter in that sufuria. But today's episode, we're going to use an oven. So the first things first, every time you're baking, the first thing you need to do is to preheat your oven. Most of the cakes we bake at 180 degrees. And today's cake, we're also going to bake at the same temperature. So the first thing is to preheat your oven at least 5 to 10 minutes before you start baking. Once you put your oven on to start preheating, the next thing you do is to prepare your baking tin. Now, there are two ways you can prepare your baking tin. And you don't have to use a round tin. It could be a square, especially if you're having it at home. It could be any shape. Now, we use Ugali tins because they are heavy duty and we're into commercial baking. If you're baking from home, you can even use your sufuria in the oven. It works, believe you me. Or you can even go to the supermarket, buy a baking tin. Nowadays, most supermarkets actually sell baking tins. So the way to prepare your baking tin, it's either you can apply oil, margarine, or butter, and then line with a parchment paper. So you just line like what I've done, or you can just apply oil, margarine, or butter, and then you put a little flour and dust it, and then you remove that flour. That's where you're going to bake your cake. And believe you me, it's just as good as using a parchment paper. Your cake will come out very easily. There's another way that I'm going to show you in another episode. It's called a goop, but that's not for today's video. Now, the next thing you need to do is to measure out your ingredients. I can't overemphasize on how important it is to measure your ingredients. It's not once, when I was starting, it's not once that I forgot to put in some ingredients, to add some ingredients, and mostly you forget something like baking powder. I've even forgotten sugar. You can imagine baking a cake without sugar. I mean, that's not a cake. I only realized after the cake came out and it was looking funny, and I tasted, it was bland cake. So measure out your ingredients, have them ready. It makes your work easier. It makes sure that you don't forget anything. Now, there are two ways of measuring. You can use measuring cups, like what I have. Nowadays, these things are very affordable. This set you can even get for 300 bob. And now even most supermarkets are selling them. So it's something you really need, especially if you like baking. It's not just baking. There are so many things that will need measurements. It comes in cups and spoons. These are measuring cups, these are measuring spoons. Now, if you don't want to use cups, there is a way you can use a weighing scale. Personally, mostly I prefer to use a weighing scale. I find it more accurate, and I'll tell you why. Because if it says 11 grams, it will be 11 grams. But for the cups, sometimes I can tell you use 1 cup. Some cups, you'll find that if you heap too much, it will be too much. It will go like beyond by like 10 grams. So you find that you've exceeded your recipe by like 10 grams, which sometimes can make a very big difference. And also, sometimes you have to tap to make sure that your cup is leveled. So for me, especially unless it's something like baking powder or something, and even those ones, you can also use a scale. Let's say if it's 11 grams, instead of 11 grams, you can use maybe 2 teaspoons or something like that. But don't let that limit you. Go ahead, get your cups. They go for about 300 bob, and let's get moving. So I have my ingredients here, and my ingredients that I'm using today, I have 4 eggs, medium sized. Most of the time, an egg, the average size of egg is about 50 grams. So look for the at least medium size, not those small ones. So we'll need 4 eggs. We'll need half a cup of oil. We'll also need 1 cup of sugar. I've already weighed it already. We'll need essence. Now, today's video, we are doing a lemon cake. So what I'm using lemon essence or lemon extract, whichever you have, whichever is available. We are not complicating life here. We are baking at home. I'm also going to use a lemon, but I'm going to use the zest and the juice from the lemon. I'm also going to use 1 cup of yogurt. And I have, this is my ugali flour. I've already weighed out 2 cups of finely ground ugali flour. Now, I think we all know that ugali flour can be a bit rough. So to make it more fine, so that when you're eating the ugali flour, the ugali cake, it doesn't feel like it's too rough. You see, when you buy a blender, there's that bit that is that mills maybe spices or stuff like that. That's the part that I've used to mill my flour, just to grind it a bit to make the particles slightly smaller, so that the cake is a bit more palatable. You don't want to feel like you're eating ugali. Actually, somebody made fun of it and said I'm making something called gojagoto, because I'm mixing oil with flour, but we're making cake. We're not making gojagoto. If you're a Kenyan, you know what that exactly means, or if you come from that part of the community. And we're also going to have a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Regular salt, doesn't have to be, sea salt and all that. We just need salt. We also need 2 teaspoons of baking powder. And I've already mentioned that we're going to use our lemon, and we'll need 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. Now, cornstarch is not the same as corn flour. Cornstarch is mostly used for thickening soups, but in this particular whatever recipe, we are using it to help give you a more fluffy cake, especially because we are doing ugali flour. The flour is not very fine, so we are going to use it to make at least the cake to feel a bit more fluffy. So we'll just get started right away. I'm just going to grate this. I do want to grate it way ahead because I want to show you how to grate without making your cake very bitter. So I'm going to grate the outer part. Make sure you don't go to the inner bits. When you go to the white part, it tends to be a bit bitter, and you don't want your cake tasting a bit bitter. Too bitter. So you're going to leave out the white part. So the only part we need is the zest. And the zest is the green part of the lemon. You can also use lime, by the way. It works just as good. But I prefer using lemon. And if you don't know, you can also use lemon as a preservative, especially the zest. You can use it as a preservative, but today we are using it as a flavoring. So you just remove the zest. You're using a regular grater, the one you use for your carrots. Just grate like that. Like that. Make sure you don't get to the white part. So we've already grated our carrot. This, don't worry how little it looks. It makes a very big difference. And then now I'm going to squeeze out the juice. Don't worry, my surface is very clean. Also make sure that your hands are clean when you're getting into this. So I'm still going to squeeze it into the same container, because I'm going to add both of them at the ends. This one you may find it in the supermarkets. Can't remember how much exactly I bought it, but it was some years ago. But they are very much available in the supermarket. Oh, and I forgot to mention, you should make sure that you wash your lemon before you use it. Make sure that it's very clean, you wash thoroughly, because as you can see, we are using the zest from the lemon. And we basically should wash all the fruits, not just during this period, but always. You should always make sure that you've washed your fruits and your vegetables. So we have the juice and we have the zest. So we're going to go to the second part. Now here I'm going to put the wet ingredients in the blender. We're using a blender, we're not using a mixer. So I know most of us have blenders at home. So I'm looking for the easiest ways of you being able to bake at home. So the first thing I'm going to put is my sugar. Don't worry, I know it's a dry ingredient, but I'm going to add my eggs inside there. So I always advise people to break one egg at a time, because you may break an egg and find that the rest are spoiled, and maybe you've already broken 10 inside here, and maybe those are the last eggs you have for that day. Maybe it's at night, you're baking at night and the shops are closed, and even though you don't really want to throw away anything, so just break one egg at a time, so that if there's any that is not good, you can throw it away. So we are going to start with this. I've already put my eggs and my sugar. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to blend this. First, the reason I'm blending is to make sure that the sugar is well ground. I mean, it's well dissolved. Secondly, is for aeration. I'm sure you know when you mix or when you whip eggs, you're incorporating air into the eggs. So that's what we are going to do today. So you're going to blend until at least the eggs and the sugar are very well incorporated and a bit fluffy. So by being fluffy, you want to see the foam coming out of the eggs. So I'm going to blend a little more. So our eggs are ready. And now we are going to add yogurt. We've already weighed out our yogurt. So we're going to add the yogurt. Add the yogurt, and you're sure you don't want to lose anything. Now, if you're using flavored yogurt, that means it's already sweetened. You may want to reduce the amount of sugar just a little bit, not too much, because you see the yogurt is already sweetened. Maybe you're using natural yogurt, just use the whole amount of the sugar that I've mentioned in the recipe. And then now we are adding the oil. So then we continue mixing. So this is ready. Now there's a very important step in baking that some people tend to ignore, and that is sifting. So sifting is basically passing your flour through a sieve. Now there's several reasons why you do that. First, if you're mixing your flour with some other ingredients, it's very necessary to take it through a sieve. First, it helps to mix properly. Also, it helps to remove any excess particles that might be, any foreign particles that might be in the flour, because you don't know how this flour goes into the processing, anything might have gone through, and you want to make sure that your cake is safe for ingestion. So also the other thing is to make sure there is some aeration. Sometimes when you store the flour, it tends to form some lumps because maybe of the weather, maybe it's a bit cold. So to avoid all that, to make sure that you get rid of all that, take your flour through a sieve. This is, you don't have to buy this big one. I'm only using this one because we run a bakery. So just add your baking powder, your cornstarch, and your salt. So just shake it a little bit like that. You see, we are incorporating some air and making sure if there are any lumps, they are removed completely. In case there's any dirt, maybe something got in during the process of milling, everything is removed. So sometimes you actually find very big particles of I don't know what, or maybe the maize, because in this case we're using corn flour. Sometimes you find pieces of maize, so you don't really want to bite into your cake and you're feeling there's some maize inside. So it's a bit, it's not as light as the wheat flour, but I tried to mill it a bit to make sure that I reduce the size of the particles. What I can tell you for sure, you don't expect the texture to be exactly the same as wheat, but when you have it in mind that it is actually ugali flour, you wouldn't be expecting it to be as fine, but the taste is amazing. That one I can assure you. So I have some excess particles and I'm not going to put in here because they are too big. It didn't mill properly, but that won't affect my recipe because it's almost negligible. So we are going to mix, just make a hole at the center like that, and we are going to add our wet ingredients. You can add in 2 bits. The first bit you sort of fold in. You don't want to remove all the air to put in a lot of air into your cake batter. So just mix slowly. You don't want to bring in a lot of air because what happens is your cake gets very big holes inside because you've put in a lot of air. So you can put the remaining part. Don't worry about it looking too runny because this is the flour is a bit coarse. And as I said, it's a very good option for those who are looking for gluten-free cake or snack at home. So you can do this at home very easily. So I'm going to add my lemon zest and lemon juice, fresh lemon juice. I'm going to add that and add 1 teaspoon of my flavor. I'm using lemon essence. I don't like, when I'm preparing my ingredients, I don't like putting my flavors in the dishes because you're going to lose quite a bit of it. So I prefer to get it straight from the bottle when I'm using it. So we just mix slowly, not too vigorously, just slowly, to make sure that everything is well incorporated and you've removed all the lumps. You can keep checking to make sure that the lumps are gone. So just make sure that all the lumps are gone. You don't want, because if you don't mix, what happens is when you cut into your cake, you find that it has some parts with You know how you make ugali and you find some lumps, some part didn't mix up very well? That's exactly what's going to happen to your cake. So you want to make sure that everything is very well mixed. You can also use a whisk. It's still going to work. So I think ours is well done now. That's what you expect. It's a bit runny, but I can assure you it works. So we are going to get our cake. So we had our prepared tin, and we are going to pour into our tin like that. So this is it. We are going to put it in our oven, the preheated oven, and we are going to bake at 180 degrees for 45 minutes. After 45 minutes, you can come with a toothpick and check in the middle, just prick different parts of the cake. If it comes out and it's dry, you just know that your cake is done. If it's still a bit damp, leave it for further maybe 10-15 minutes and keep checking. But otherwise, see you after 45 minutes. So I know you really want to see how the ugali cake came out, right? No, it didn't come out as ugali. It came out as cake because it is ugali cake, not ugali. So we made the ugali cake with lemon, and we are going to have a taste of it. First, I'm going to show you it. Actually, you're just going to eat it just like cake. As you can see, it just breaks as easily. You're able to dig your fork in it just as easily as you do with cake. It came out with it's quite a flat top, not a big dome. And we are going to taste. The lemon is just right. And you know what? It adds a lot of flavor, other than if you could have done it just plain. And it's really nice. I would say you serve it warm, because now we allowed it to cool for 25 minutes, and I prefer to serve it warm. You feel like it tastes better when it's still warm. It's very, very nice, and an easy way for you to have gluten-free cake at home. You can make very easily. Most of us have maybe the ugali flour at home. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I hope you're really going to try this, and please, if you do, kindly tag us eBakers on Facebook and at eBakers Creations on Instagram. We'd love to know what you got out of this video. We are hoping that it was very insightful, and we are hoping that you're also going to join us on the next one. Before you leave, kindly make sure that you subscribe, and if you've liked this video, give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment in the comment section. Let us know what you'd like to see next, and let us know if you've tried. What exactly was the result like? Did people actually get to know it was ugali cake, or they just thought it's a regular cake? Please stay tuned for the next one, because I assure you, you're going to get so much more. And in that case, press that notification bell for you to be notified about the next one when we post it. Thank you.